The 12 Powers of Man. By Charles Fillmore. Introduction. Jesus prophesied the advent of a race of men who would sit with him on 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. This book explains the meaning of this mystical reference, what and where the 12 thrones are, and what attainments are necessary by man before he can follow Jesus in this phase of his regeneration. Regeneration follows generation in the development of man. Generation sustains and perpetuates the human, regeneration unfolds and glorifies the divine. It is not expected that beginners in the study of metaphysical Christianity will understand this book. It deals with forces that function below and above the field of the conscious mind. The average religious thinker knows nothing about the subconscious mind and very little about the superconscious. This book presupposes a working knowledge of both. This book aims to clear up the mystery that ever envelopes the advent, life, and death of Jesus. To the superficial reader of the Gospels, his life was a tragedy and, so far as concerns the kingly reign that was prophesied, it was a failure. Yet those who understand the subtlety of the soul and supremacy of spirit see that Jesus was conqueror of a psychic force that was destroying the human race. Jesus was the star actor in the greatest drama ever played on earth. This drama was developed in the celestial realm, its object being to inject new life into perishing men. Page 4. The full significance of this great plan of salvation cannot be understood by man until he awakens faculties that relate him to the earth beneath and the heavens above. It had long been prophesied that the time was ripe for the advent on this planet of a new race, and there had been much speculation as to the character and advent of the Superman. Herein is set forth the metaphysical idea of the spiritual quickening of man on the human plane and his transformation into the divine, not by a miracle or the fiat of God, but by the gradual refinement of the man of flesh into the man of spirit. As Paul taught, this corruptible must put on incorruption, and this mortal must put on immortality. Jesus was the first fruits of those who are coming out of the mortal into the immortal. He was the type man, the way shower, and, through following his example and taking on his character as a spiritual-minded man, we shall come into the same consciousness. Spiritual discernment always precedes demonstration, consequently more is taught in this book as a possibility of attainment by man than has been demonstrated by any man save Jesus. Those who feel that they are ready for the great adventure in the attainment of eternal life in the body here and now should not be deterred because there are no outstanding examples of men who have risen to this most exalted degree. Through mental energy, or the dynamic power of the mind, man can release the life of the electrons secreted in the atoms that compose the cells of his body. Page 5. Physical science says that if the electronic energy stored in a single drop of water were suddenly released, its power would demolish a 6-story building. Who can estimate the power stored in the millions of cells that compose the human body? The method of release of this body energy and its control are mystically taught by Jesus. He was transfigured before his apostles, and his face did shine as the sun, and his garments became white as the light. Before his crucifixion he had attained such mastery over his body cells that he told the Jews that they might destroy his body and in 3 days he would raise it up. He demonstrated this in the resurrection of his body after it had been pronounced lifeless. When he disappeared in a cloud, he simply unloosed the dynamic atoms of his whole body and released their electrical energy. This threw him into the 4th dimension of substance, which he called the kingdom of the heavens. The dynamic energy that man releases through prayer, meditation, and the higher activities of his mind is very great, and if not controlled and raised to the spiritual plane, may prove a source of body destruction. If carried to the extreme, it may even prove a cause of soul destruction. Be not afraid of them that kill the body, but are not able to kill the soul, but rather fear him who is able to destroy both soul and body in hell. This one who is able to destroy both soul and body in Gehenna is the personal self or selfish ego that is in man. Page 6. The electronic energy in man is a form of fire, which is represented by Gehenna. This electronic fire must be used unselfishly. If used to further the selfishness of man, it becomes destructive, through the cross currents that it sets up in the nervous system. We do not encourage those who still have worldly ambitions to take up the development of the 12 powers of man. You will be disappointed if you seek to use these superpowers to gain money, turn stones into bread, control others, the kingdoms of the world. All these things will I give thee, or make a display of your power. If thou art the Son of God, cast thyself down. These are the temptations of the selfish ego, as recorded in the 4th chapter of Matthew, which Jesus had to overcome, and which all who follow him in the regeneration have to overcome. Unspeakable joy, glory, and eternal life are promised to those who with unselfish devotion strive to develop the Son of God consciousness. All the glories of the natural man are as nothing compared with the development of the spiritual man. The things of this world pass away, but the things of spirit endure forever. In his flesh body man may be compared to the caterpillar that is the embryo of the butterfly. In its undeveloped state the caterpillar is a mere worm of the earth, but it has, enfolded within it, a beautiful creature awaiting release from its material envelope. Paul visualized this when he wrote in Romans 8:22, "For we know that the whole creation groaneth and travaileth in pain together until now." Page 7, and not only so, but ourselves also, who have the first fruits of the Spirit, even we ourselves groan within ourselves, waiting for our adoption, the redemption of our body. Jesus, the great teacher, gave many lessons for our instruction, the greatest and most mystical being the revelation of John. Here he showed himself to John as he is in his redeemed body. He stood in the midst of 7 lights, which represent the 7 ideas of divine mind ruling in the restored earth. One like unto a son of man, clothed with a garment down to the foot, and girt about at the breasts with a golden girdle. And his head and his hair were white as white wool, white as snow, and his eyes were as a flame of fire, and his feet like unto burnished brass, as if it had been refined in a furnace, and his voice as the voice of many waters. And he had in his right hand 7 stars, and out of his mouth proceeded a sharp 2-edged sword, and his countenance was as the sun shineth in his strength. This description of the appearance of Jesus is partly symbolical, because John did not himself understand the full import of the powers that were being exercised by the spiritual man, whose words were so clean-cut that they appeared to John as a 2-edged sword, whose eyes were so discerning that they seemed a flame of fire, whose voice was like the rippling of many waters. Language is poor and bare when one seeks to describe the glories of the spiritual state. Page 8. Comparisons within the comprehension of the reader are necessary, and they but tamely tell of the superhuman man and his powers. However, this pen picture by John of what he saw when he was lifted up in the Spirit on the Lord's day gives us a glimpse of what the redeemed man is like, and what we shall attain when we awake, with thy likeness. It should be thoroughly understood that this sight of Jesus that was given to John was not a vision of a man who had died and gone to heaven up in the skies, but it was the opening of John's eyes to existence in what may be termed the 4th dimension man. We use this term 4th dimension because it is the name given to a state of existence that popular material science says must be, in order to account for the effects that are being expressed on every side. It is also called the interpenetrating ether, which is not to be understood as something material, or as being matter, but as something having properties far more substantial than matter. Through the application of mathematical principles, scientific men are proving the existence of the spiritual side of being. This does not refer to the psychical realm in which undeveloped souls rest while awaiting reincarnation. Many people take it for granted that soul realms and spiritual realms are identical. But these stand to each other as moonshine and sunshine. Jesus called the interpenetrating state of being the kingdom of heaven, or, in the original Greek, the kingdom of the heavens. Page 9, he said that it was like a treasure hid in a field, which, when a man discovered it, he would sell all that he had to buy. The majority of Christians believe that they are going to this heaven when they die, but Jesus does not teach that the dead go first to glory. On the contrary, Jesus teaches that death may be overcome. If a man keep my word, he shall never see death. Paul taught that Jesus attained victory over death. Christ being raised from the dead dieth no more. Let not sin therefore reign in your mortal body, that ye should obey the lusts thereof, neither present your members unto sin as instruments of unrighteousness, but present yourselves unto God, as alive from the dead, and your members as instruments of righteousness unto God. The psalmist writes, What is man, that thou art mindful of him? And the Son of Man, that thou visitest him? For thou hast made him but little lower than God, and crownest him with glory and honor. Thou makest him to have dominion over the works of thy hands, thou hast put all things under his feet. With the mind of the seer, Ralph Waldo Emerson says, Great hearts send forth steadily the secret forces that incessantly draw great events, and wherever the mind of man goes, nature will accompany him, no matter what the path. Page 10. Page 11. Verily I say unto you, that ye who have followed me, in the regeneration when the Son of Man shall sit on the throne of his glory, ye also shall sit upon 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. And every one that hath left houses, or brethren, or sisters, or father, or mother, or children, or lands, for my name's sake, shall receive 100-fold, and shall inherit eternal life. Jesus. Page 12. Page